Dinkar Sandhu brings experience of over 23 years in building and developing organizations globally. Had a number of leadership positions within the contract research areas, and has a master's degree in business administration and a bachelor's degree in engineering. And he is currently the CEO of Axis Clinicals, which is a global CRO with research facilities in Asia and North America. But Dinkar, thank you very much, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And let me just get my... Okay. So, Mark, how do I share my screen? Okay, yeah.
You have your microphone. There's a little on the far left, right, sorry, there's a... Yeah, got it.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mark, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am calling in from US, and I think a lot of you are in Europe, and I see some of people are in Asia. So good day to all. So the talk today is story of Axis Clinicals, how we leverage the disruption of COVID-19 and create it into an opportunity for us. Okay. So how we were able to manage the disruption and do the trials and serve the needs of our customers better. And some of the lessons I think could be useful for the audience here. Okay. Axis Clinical, just to provide us help you with the scope. Axis Clinical is a CRO which conducts early stage and pharmacology studies with healthy volunteers. And for these conducting these studies, we have centers in USA, India, Mexico, and China. And of course, we also do multi-site phase 2-3 patient trials. But the scope of this particular talk is about the early stage of pharmacology studies in healthy volunteers conducted in US, and how Axis Clinicals was able to manage the disruption caused by COVID and continue to conduct trials. So to provide a further context to the actual measures we took, the phase 1 unit for Axis USA is located in Minnesota. This is the upper Midwest region. For people who may not, it's a relatively sparsely populated. The town itself where we are located is around 200,000, or maybe around 225,000 people. With a large student population, there are 3 universities in the area with around 20,000 to 25,000 students, which from where we get a lot of our volunteers. The facility itself is around 120,000 square feet on single floor. So we have large open spaces. It's a large facility for one single phase 1 unit with more than 200 beds. The layout of the facility is such that we have 4 clinical units of 60 each, around 60 each. And to give you an idea of the scale of work we used to do before COVID, we would conduct around 40 studies a year. So typically around 4 studies a month is that's how we would start, let's say. And to do all these studies, we have more than 125 to 130 staff. To add on to the basic clinical unit, we also have a safety clinical laboratory, which can do the basic chemistry, hematology, virology, and urine analysis required for these studies, and a bioanalytical lab for conducting PK analysis of the samples. So the type of studies typically we would do is like any pharmacology phase 1, phase 2 study, like SAD, MAD, food effect studies, DDI studies, bioequivalence studies. So the size of study for like any phase 1 trial is varies from a small group for a SAD study of 8 subjects to as large as, and we are recently soon to perform a study with 76 subject bioequivalence trial with replicate design, so which can be quite large from a phase 1 perspective. Okay. So that's how our clinical unit studies are, like with in beds spread out around 8 to 10 feet apart from each other. We also have the flexibility to set up the units to perform the activities on phlebotomy chairs instead of the beds, depending on the trial design and the location. Okay, so now coming back to, with that context, let's start with like what were the challenges, and I have a few slides which just talk about the key challenges we faced and how we sort of manage them. The first challenge, as for us as a company, was just to keep the site open. Okay. So January, February, there were global news. In February, if you recall, February 2020, this is not like almost 1.5 years ago, more than 1.5 years ago. That's when initial cases in Seattle and then in New York, we had the first huge wave. And we being in Minnesota, we were not, that area was not impacted at that time. The cases were still very small. But given the rise of cases on the coastal cities, a lockdown was mandated by state government. And that meant that all businesses had to actually stop. They had to shut down their offices. And so, of course, we also had to do that. But at that time, and of course, in preparation of there was a lot of discussion around that happening in newspapers. And so we had started talking to state authorities. We also obtained legal opinion of the opinion about the governor's mandate, and found out that healthcare services are allowed to be open. And so that could allow us to to remain open, but it was iffy because we are healthcare services, but we actually do not treat patients per se. We do not provide them healthcare services. To that extent, while the many laws of healthcare services are applicable to us, but it may be challengeable. But another exemption which we found against the lockdown was any facility which is conducting research in COVID-19. So, and that's where when we were lucky, and we were actually in the process of bidding at that time for a diagnostic company to conduct trial on a diagnostic kit for a COVID-19. And we basically bid rock bottom prices and just to get that trial, not to so that we can use that and remain open. And as an outcome of that, we basically were able to open up our offices within a week. So we had a shutdown only for a week in early March. So that was one advantage to us compared to many of our other, industry-wide, we saw who had much longer disruption in their offices. Okay. This next slide is just a picture of the tents which we had to put in. So this was I talked about the diagnostic kit. So this, the trial was about people who may be experiencing symptoms of COVID at that time, and we had to collect their samples and ship it to the lab, various labs across the world. And clearly we didn't want to bring them into the site at that time. There's a lot of scare and everything. So we set up these tents outside, and people would just drive in, and our staff will go out in PPE and collect their samples. So yeah. The second challenge, of course, once you have the site open, is just continue doing the work. Okay, and I think there. We prepared a detailed COVID policy procedures, which talked about general cleaning procedures, masking procedures for all level of safety for employees, volunteers, visitor. And I have a couple of slides later on about what specific actions we did, not too different from most of us who have done in our offices. But having this document early on, I think we started working on it even before like COVID-19 had hit. I remember in February 2020 we started working on it and then sort of released it just around the lockdown. We had to stop our work for a week. And in combination of that, early and regular communication with sponsor was very, very helpful to us. So discussing with them how their trials will be delayed, the ongoing trials in March, which had to be stopped, and how we are going to bring our site back, to what steps we are taking to ensure that their trials are not impacted, or how their trials can be minimized. So regular and very early communication with sponsor was very helpful. Taking them into confidence was very, very helpful. Okay. The third challenge, I think this is all of us would have also felt. We wanted RT-PCR, like a COVID-19 testing for all volunteers. At that time, now I think not so much, but in early 2020 and through late 2020, basically, RT-PCR test equipment we could just not buy anywhere. We approached all major suppliers, major distributors, but we just could not get it. So we were stuck there. So that was one big issue. And but fortunately, we were able to negotiate with the large regional hospital chain, and they accepted that they will accept samples from all our volunteers and staff samples, which we'll be sending them on a daily basis and provide the results within 24 hours. And so that's what we did till around late of 2020 last year, till October. And in the meantime, we had been looking at various options to set up the test in our in-house laboratory, and we were able to procure the Abbott rapid antigen test as soon as it was launched. So we were one of the first ones to get it in October 2020, and since then we have been using that with, of course, the RT-PCR with the hospital remains as a backup. So that was one, I think, key challenge which we had to ensure that is resolved in some way or another. Otherwise, without that, conducting phase 1 trials would have been very difficult. And similarly, like this PP and clinical cleaning supplies. Okay, I mean, in normal times you don't even think about it. Like I don't recall I ever thought about how to order cleaning wipes, okay, or how many are we buying and how much does it cost? How are we getting masks for the staff or gloves for the staff? And at that time it became challenging, really challenging to just buy cleaning wipes itself. I know that we just short of it, and we had to really scour through whole of US basically to find these things. And they were quite innovative solutions. Our staff and one of my VP, he had good connections with some of his friends who was able to get these things. But these are the challenges which all of us have faced, and basically how. So what I want to say is like these challenges can be surmounted by just trying to find using your staff and their connections. The fourth challenge, and I think the speaker before me talked about the challenges industry-wise, has been the greatest in volunteer recruitment. And that was true for us and remains true for us even now to some extent. Schools and colleges were closed immediately, so which meant that the student population in the area was less. On the other hand, the impact is that because schools and colleges are closed, students have more free time to do the study. So, but we are a small town and most students are from different locations. So they went home, and therefore to that extent, our recruitment was reduced. The other positive point was, in a sense, was because of lockdowns, there was loss of jobs. So to that extent, some people would be looking at clinical research, phase one clinical research, where a stipend is paid as a potential source of income. So these were the two sort of um, trends, positive and the negative direction, which helped us, which reduced our voluntary recruitment, but also helped us to continue recruiting. Of course, we at our end, of course, we increased our spending on social media reach and traditional media. Every phase one trial now uses Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, besides the traditional media of radio, billboards, and newspapers, and sometimes TV. A lot of messaging, of course, went around how conducting clinical research is still safe, and what type of safe environment we provide, uh, the text used for those, and we had to work with IRB to get approval for such advertisements, understand the language, and then release those ads. What we also did, of course, is we initiated screening procedure, like a pre-screening procedure, where subjects would drive up to a location, to a place in a parking lot. Our staff would go out, take their temperature, collect their basic history. Did they travel? Did they have any fever? Did they meet any COVID person? And hand over a mask to them. And if everything looks good, then they would come in for just enter the building. So that type of screening procedure also helped create a sense of safer environment for our volunteers to be willing to participate and do. But in spite of all of this, most studies we have been conducting in smaller groups. I talked about the large study, like 76 subjects or like 90 subject studies. While earlier, I remember in 2017-18, we would be, given the size of our facility, we would have we would be able to do these studies on one day itself. Okay, that's like just dose all 90 subjects in one day, and then follow the study through. But currently, we are doing typically studies in groups of 20 or 30 or maximum 35. So these are the four key sort of challenges, and how we managed keeping the site open, recruitment, supplies, testing. In terms of specific actions we did to provide safe working environment, and I don't think it is something new to any of us. All of us probably in our various offices have done something similar. Social distancing was one first initial. So what we immediately what we have done is since COVID, we do not house more than 24 subjects, 24 subjects in one facility, one unit which has the ability to house 60 subjects. So that creates much more open space and work area and social distancing between subjects. So that's one key area. In terms of creating space in the office itself, all staff that can work remote, primarily working on their laptops or computers, like HR, QC, QA, project management, medical writing, data managers. These were asked to work remote. Clearly, the staff which is actually working with subjects, or the staff working in biomedical lab or processing lab, pharmacist, the staff who has to screen subjects, these staff have to come to the site. But other people, the administrative people, they can work from home. And that allowed us to have space in our office, and therefore we could use alternate cubicles, and that rejigging was done. At testing, I talked about testing earlier. We implemented 100% either RT-PCR or antigen testing for all volunteers before study check-in. So if it is RT-PCR early on, then RT-PCR will be done the day before, before check-in, and their sample, they would walk in and we'll collect their sample, send it to the hospital, and have their results before the study check-in. And antigen testing is rapid, so the subjects would typically arrive an hour before. They would be housed in a separate area. You collect the antigen test, find out the result, and if it is negative, then you allow them to go into the main study area. Besides that, temperature check for all staff, volunteer, visitor at the entry gate for all sites have been implemented. And contact services early on, I think now as science has evolved, people are finding that masking and is more important than the contact. Early on, if most of us will recall, that it was believed that the key transmission for COVID happens through contact. So we had much stricter guidelines around cleaning contact services earlier. So what we did is immediately in a CRO, in generally you have all access are controlled and you have swipe cards and other ways of keeping doors closed and controlling staff access. But we took an SOP deviation and basically kept all doors open, okay, except the doors to pharmacy or like a temperature control environment. Every door were just open so that you don't have to use door handles. We also set up cleaning stations across the site, okay, and so there was this discussion in management and even with staff, like how do we ensure extra level of cleaning besides the cleaning which is done on a regular basis. And there was an idea that we could ask our janitorial staff to do more work or more janitorial cleaning staff. But I think at that time it was felt that it will be better to get involved everybody into the whole effort and create that cultural bringing everybody into managing this problem, let's say, okay, and that will create a much better cultural and positive environment in our staff, and it will also help in basically in providing a message to everybody that yes, it is important to do more than or to things differently than what we were doing earlier. So what we did is basically set up cleaning station. Cleaning station is just a table with cleaning supplies, and that station was responsible for managing cleaning of few square feet of area, and then each staff was assigned a cleaning station, and then they had to clean up that area thrice a day or 4 times a day, and everybody did it. For example, I myself set up a cleaning station for myself was the refrigerators where our staff keep their lunch, okay, and so I would go in the office and I would clean that refrigerator, the handles of the refrigerators and the tap for water dispensing machine, like 4 times a day. Besides, of course, there were wipes there too for everybody to clean it after each use. But we also said that we have to build that culture that we are doing more to ensure and build that safe environment for ourselves. We used to use fingerprint for staff to punch in their time when they come in and go out for all the hourly staff. We changed that system to a facial recognition touchless system. So like everybody now walks in and there is an iPad on the entry gate and you show your face and it automatically captures when you have come in and when you are going out. And of course, wipes for vitals and ECGs. All staff, volunteer, visitors are required to wear mask at all times. And as vaccination rates have increased, vaccinated staff are not now. This is a policy which has come up like 2 months ago. vaccinated staffs are not required to wear masks now if they are not with volunteers. If study is happening and staff is working with volunteers either during screening or actual study conduct, still both volunteers and staff have to wear a mask. But vaccinated staff, when they are in office, working at their desk or working in group, do not have to wear mask. In terms of vaccination, for volunteers, of course, there is no specific guidelines about phase 1 trials for volunteers, whether it is required, not required. We have not seen in discussion with sponsors that vaccination be an inclusion or exclusion criteria, and we continue to monitor evolving landscape. My belief is phase 1 studies, because they require housing for multiple days, in next few months or few couple of quarters, as vaccination become much more prevalent, there would be probably be a requirement that vaccinated subjects should be vaccinated to conduct in-house studies requiring multiple days in-house. For staff, though, and especially in US, everybody and all across the world, there has been a lot of misinformation around vaccination. And but at our end, we started sending information about vaccination. I have like a monthly meeting with my staff. We used to talk about how vaccine is being developed. I personally participated actually in the vaccination trial, Pfizer's vaccine trial for phase 3 trial, and got my vaccine like way back in August 2022. So we coordinated a vaccine camp early on for all of our staff with Minnesota state government, provided cash incentive and time off to get vaccines. And like a few weeks ago, we enforced a mandate for weekly testing, even before the last week's announcement by the federal government. So these are the steps we have taken for vaccination for our staff. So outcome, what happened in last 1.5 years now? We were closed only for 1 week in March 2022. Recruitment has been, as I said earlier, has been lower than that in past. So we are not able to conduct especially large studies in one single group, as many sponsors do prefer, especially for bioequivalent studies. So we are conducting studies in groups. But we did not have a knock on wood. We did not have any outbreak or like a bunched up cases of COVID-19 cases. Over the last 18 months, we have around less than 15 staff who have tested positive. One of them has been to, I think 1 or 2 have been to hospitalized also. But no mortality in staff, and all these cases have been spread out. Like one case, then a month later another second case, and so on and so forth. And then there have been around 20-25 volunteers who were tested positive at check-in, and then they were sent home. So but as a result of all these precautions, we haven't had like a scenario where we found multiple COVID cases and then we had to cancel a study or redo the study completely or close it later on. And we have been, after that initial March and a little bit, we were closed for a week, but because of that disruption, we did not do we did not house subjects for 1.5 months from March and partly April. But after that, we have been doing studies at our site regularly. And in fact, our revenues in last 6 quarters is actually higher than the previous 6 quarters. So it's been a reasonable success for us. In terms of learnings, and before I go to learnings, I would just say that I think we had two key advantages, which probably some other CRO conducting phase 1 trial may not have had. One is we are located in US Upper Midwest, relatively less population, more open spaces, robust healthcare system, and cases have been relatively lower. So we haven't had like a really bad wave like New York had early on, or Florida has now, or Italy had at some point in time, India at some point in time, and so many other places. So we have had waves, but relatively mild, let's say. So that has helped us. So in terms of getting staff or getting volunteers to that extent, it helps us a lot. And I think second is we are a privately held, relatively smaller organization, so which meant that we were able to make decisions very quickly and with limited bureaucracy. And I say that because we did a few studies for larger CROs, because while we were open and we were able to set up procedures, conduct studies with the procedures I talked about, and these are the same procedures with every CRO now has in place, but it took larger CROs longer to establish those policies and come up with procedures, and rightly so, because larger organization you have to think about multiple locations, multiple country codes, and so on and so forth. I think in terms of learnings, my personal learning is that transport communication is probably the only tool we have for managing an evolving situation. And the decisions are being made, and you do not know when you will have to change your decisions. You will find that you made a completely messed up decision, and your staff and sponsor both, and of course volunteers too, you have to be completely open that this is what we believe today is true. Tomorrow something may change, and then we will then change our decision. Okay, nobody is an expert in this situation, and then we will continue to monitor, track, and work accordingly. So without getting staff getting on the same side of the table, if they see that the decisions are being made by a black box process, then you do not get that level of commitment from them to manage this situations like this. Communication with sponsors about their data quality concerns. What will happen if they have COVID patients? Does it impact their data? And of course, their project timelines. Sponsors, they invest a significant amount of time and effort and money in these projects, and they expect their timelines to be met. And clearly, some of those timelines will not be met. Okay? If the studies is being done in groups, and we ourselves were not very clear like how many groups we will do, because we do not know how will recruitment play out. So we have to manage those expectations of sponsors upfront, indicating to them that this is the best plan we will do, but be aware, and we will clearly continue to communicate about recruitment efforts to you. And with volunteers also communicating clearly, like about their safety concerns, providing the positive and friendly environment. And finally, of course, you cannot overplan for such a situation. Plan, and plan. Keep in mind what will happen if tomorrow a wave happens. What happens if something is not available? What happens? I'll share with you like for cleaning supplies. We just had bought a few like a couple of drums of bleach also, just to be used in case if you were not able to get cleaning solutions. So things like that, like you just have to, you cannot, as I said, overplan. So yeah, so I think that was all from me, and I would be happy to take questions. And yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That's very interesting and actually good to hear it. The real practical detail you put in there. I can't see any questions up, so I'm just going to ask you one very brief question, which will hopefully move us on. If you had to relive this experience again and do it again, which one thing would you have chosen of all the different learnings? If you had to choose one, what would it have been?
Okay. I think the two big challenges it's difficult to answer in hindsight, actually. In hindsight, everything looks different. Okay. I'm just trying to, I think I would have started investing into volunteer recruitment. Okay. Slightly differently, let's say. Okay. Our advertisement strategies, our how we reach out to volunteers, how we can retain, let's say, college students. Okay. Could we have started building a more early on, like while February or March, we could have started a campaign early on, so that in June, July, August, September, October, when they are not in town, but they may be within 200 miles, they probably can come. Okay, so we could have done that differently.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
Would be.
It's very helpful. Thank you very much. So we're a little bit over time now, so maybe we move on to the next speaker. But thank you very much. And obviously, if you've got more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out directly to Dinka. But thank you again.